I think we can get started. So thank you for joining. I am going to get started on the IRC as well as here, so I'll be a little slow to type, but I'll try to make this thing. So the first topic we have today is DPL model improvement proposals and TC liaisons. So there are three links on this topic, and one of these has already merged. So that's basically we've gone ahead and moved the DPL model from a resolution into a doc so we can make further improvements to it. And the second and the third link are the improvements that are being proposed right now. And I was trying to get this in this meeting so we can get some ideas going. And if there are any major disagreements, this would be a good time to hash it out.
Yeah, so basically, like it reset the leadership model on every cycle, and the concern raised there was the TC member, even they had the responsibility of monitoring DPL model in our current policy as well as in the new one. So having a specific TC member assigned or volunteer for those role was the feedback there. So I added a new thing like TC liaison as a mandatory thing for any DPL model. If, say, for example, any new request coming for a DPL, so along with release, testing, CI thing, and security thing, they need to, get a TC member also sign, volunteer for tracking the DPL thing. So that will be helpful, having a responsibility of checking to a particular person or number of person instead of, the whole TC members. So that's the proposal in this new model. And yeah, if any question, anything we can discuss here. Otherwise, I think, yeah, I mean, we can discuss here. Otherwise, let's keep discussing it on Gerrit also, because there are a few non-TC members also participating in that. And yeah, if anything, I mean, I'm not in hurry of, merging this. So if you wanted to keep it open for, say, a couple of weeks also, that's also fine. But yeah, number of, like I sent it on mailing list also. So whoever from community wanted to participate, they should have participated till now. And this one, just to show, like, we have the TC volunteers for these new TC license. So I added my name in all 3 or 4 DPL model. But any other TC member would like to help, just comment on the Gerrit. I'll replace the name. Yeah, and every cycle, we'll be resetting these data, obviously, from DPL to PTL. So there will be new license, new TC member can help on monitoring that. Yeah, Jay.
So I don't think this is direct feedback for this change, but it's another change that we may want to consider having as well, is that with the DPL, we're in our TC documentation right now, we do say that the DPL model is an alternative for like a lighter weight things that you don't have to have this recurrence. There was a bit of discussion in one of these changes, I think, I honestly, I don't know how to say it, how to pronounce his name correctly. But from the Oslo team.
Oh, Takashi.
Takashi, that's it. Yeah, Takashi commented about how we still have a statement in there saying that the DPL model is preferred for low activity projects. And I would suggest that we consider revising that as well. But the changes that are there, I've obviously voted +1 on. I think it's better than it was, but that might be an even further improvement.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Because we really wanted, to project to use this model as a, avoiding the election thing or the slow activities thing or something. Yeah, I'll check that. I'll push that follow up maybe this week, and then we can see if any further improvement we need. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, so that's what I had on this DPL thing. If nothing else, please review feedback on Gerrit. And yeah, that's it.
I think one thing I did want to ask is the follow-up change, which is to add the TC liaisons to the DPL stuff. So there are 3 projects, I think, at the moment in this change. And also there's one other new project that we've added with the DPL model, which is Freezer. So there's 4 projects in all. So it'd be nice to spread the load around and not tag Ghanshyam to follow up with all of these teams. So if anybody is interested, feel free to just comment on that patch, so we can make the changes directly on the fly.
And it's not like the lot of work. It's like I know if I'm volunteering for Oslo, so I can keep attending their meeting if they're happening. CI is there, so it's easy to know the project health. And if it's difficult to know the project health, it means like it's a less activity or inactive. If meetings are not happening, CI failing or something. So not big work, like once in a month. If you wanted to spend just 5 minutes, you should be able to know whether project is active or going towards the inactiveness. So yeah, feel free to comment there. I will be happy to replace the name for all 3 or whatever. This is just I showed it. Initial framework, at least we have the liaison or volunteer from TC. So I just volunteer for all of them. Freezer one, I need to check. Did we merge the freezer?
Yes.
And did I incorporated that one here? No.
No, not yet. I think
Okay.
this patch
So I'll
preceded
just
it.
put a follow-up on top of that. And I think Dimitri is there, so he can be a volunteer, I think. He's TC2. So, or anyone else who wanted to be. So I'll push that one follow-up or on top of that.
Do we have anywhere written procedure what it means when the project is active or not active? Which checks in particular are we doing?
So we have listed few of the thing in our emerging and inactive document, like what all things we need to monitor if we are marking project as active or inactive. But basically, if we see, obviously meetings are not mandatory. Few projects can choose not to have a meeting, but as long as they are keeping their CI in a green state, they are doing the releases, they are responding on queries, they have especially all these the housekeeping work we have, like for example the Joule configurer, right? If they are not solving the Joule configurer, obviously they are not their gate is not green or healthy, right? So those are the few basic things we do observe. But as I remember, there's no strict rule of any project to have a n number of meeting or any meeting they have. Like if they are able to manage the project activity without meeting, so it's as long as they are available either on IRC or mailing list to answer any incoming query.
But that is a purely manual process. I mean, there is apparently no possibility to do some kind of like a semaphore, health semaphore for the project status. Because what you tell, if the team is reacting and stuff like that, this is not something that you can check with scripts.
The problem is that's like the most difficult thing that the TC has been trying to do for like 10 years is like come up with that red light, green light thing, and it's never successful. So I think that I think the reflection here is that it has to be a judgment call by a human.
Okay.
Yeah, because even though the active we see, we can't actually judge, like because in Oslo you might see 2 patches merge in 2 months compared to say Ironic or Noah or others. So it's not like we cannot, it's difficult to convert those in number and automate or convert it into a schema. So it's just a judgment call and how the project is and how they are active on the incoming request.
Yeah, I'll second what G-Man says there, because when I first joined the TC, I tried an effort to like sort of make this you can run a script and then see if a program is active or not. But the real problem is that with OpenStack, we do have such things that are so mature that it's possible for them to receive no or minimal commits other than
Yeah,
just
sure.
necessary to keep the CI running. And that doesn't mean no one cares about it. That doesn't mean if a bug's filed against it that's severe, it won't get fixed. It just means that it's mostly done. And so that's why looping the human into the process. And one thing I want to mention, because I haven't heard it mentioned yet, is that the inactive process also gives us a way to like advertise that we need help. So like instead of going straight to retirement, being able to put something as inactive and make loud noises, it prevents there from being like procedural churn as something gets retired and unretired. And maybe instead we can set it over here on a back burner and make loud noises and someone will emerge who's using it and take it over. And we had that happen with Freezer actually. So
yeah, and Mistral also, I think the case where it was almost dead and we published it as, I think, inactive or somewhere, then we got the new volunteer to help there. Yeah, and yeah, Slavik mentioned the list, one script in IRC, so that you can see how much activity in past 180 days or that. But that script will give you the data, but not to decide whether they are active or inactive, because as we mentioned, based on the project activities, number differs. Project status, I'll say.
Exactly. Yeah, but I was using this script a couple of times to see the gate status and things like that for the project, which may help to decide if project is active or not.
Yeah.
I was facing from time to time question basically from the operator or from the user point of view, how to know whether the project is really active or not. Basically, an end user have absolutely no possibility to figure this out. So I was just thinking, what if continue a little bit with this idea of like a semaphore, even though it's set by a human, but really assign a semaphore like green, yellow, red state to the project so that user can also get a chance to figure out that something is going on with this project that is currently marked as yellow, is under observation by TC. So if you think about starting with this project brand new, please think twice.
One of the topics that I brought up for the PTG was sort of talking about activity and like the shape of OpenStack with regards to stuff like that. I think you're definitely right. And another thing that sort of is going in that direction is that we're expecting detailed directives come down from the EU sometime in the next year or two. That'll define, like what critical infrastructure pieces have to do in order to remain secure. And in OpenStack, that sort of categorization, we can actually do this in both directions, right? Like we shouldn't always just be reflective. We should also, provide leadership, and maybe by categorizing things, saying like these things are critical, we can put an extra emphasis on making sure those projects stay active, and then deal with the other projects that have less interest in sort of a semaphore way or something like that. But I think there's got to be a combination of reflecting reality and communicating that with us actually maybe even stepping forward and as a leadership thing saying, here's core critical pieces of infrastructure. These must have, good security liaisons. These must have, good regular releases, with a little bit more of a tight grip on how they are managed as a whole, from an OpenStack perspective, because they're that kind of critical infrastructure. And that's sort of something that I think we'll have to play with and talk about over time to try to find something that everyone will be happy with that goes there. Because I mean, something like Ironic could be considered critical infrastructure to some people, but also would probably not be, keen for such a centralized management thing. So there is a lot of different perspectives and things here. And I honestly have struggled to find a concrete proposal that I think would have any chance of gaining consensus. So if you have ideas, I would love to hear them, and I'm happy to be a sounding board.
One thing though, sorry to interject. That seemed like a topic that we didn't have much, like you said, Jay, we don't have enough to make a proposal. is there a possibility that we can break it up? Like you're chasing the security aspect specifically, and we don't have security liaisons probably for half the projects, or we don't know who they are or whether they're active, etc. So is there that part of the proposal that can be made saying every project needs to nominate a security liaison or follow the VMT?
Yeah, that require our application requirement to change for project, because I don't think we have the VMT volunteer or security volunteer as a mandatory requirement for any project, which should good to have, I think.
And the security SIG is very underpopulated right now too. So like from a certain perspective, we've got to think about, you know, that's why I kind of am thinking about this in categories and prioritization kind of methods, because I don't think we have a lot of ways to get more work, more like total hours in the day to do this stuff. But maybe we can adjust the way that we approach them, you know, be more explicit about what things get more attention, what things get less attention, and communicate that to people, and maybe lead to a better experience for the end user. Like, I don't know. Obviously, this is kind of fuzzy.
And you know, like we have the data for at least on inactive thing, we have the list of inactive project, obviously, that we can put that in schema or that yellow color or whatever you want. But the one question I have to Artem, like the user you mentioned, so where they see the projects and their status, is it on our landscaping and navigation map, or they check the project, our governance TC project YML?
I would say on different aspects. Just consider an example. There is a company that starts deploying private OpenStack, and they are thinking about Trove, for example. So how would I know, is it worth of a try or not? So Project Navigator is one of the things. On the other side, I would say you eventually know already projects that you are maybe interested in. Otherwise, something like there is an official documentation for the project, also embed something like a semaphore, like those categorization stuff, like activity is currently low since 2 years. There was no PTL, stuff like that. So basically something to signal to the users that maybe this project is not what you want to start with.
Maybe we can have some kind of status like that in the project's YAML file, and then add some small badge or something in the README file of the in main README file in the each repo. So every user who would go to the Git repository will see, like, there are some badges like that for PyPy builds and things like that. You can add it, right? And it's some simple JavaScript or whatever, and it could be something like that. I think it would be visible for users easily. In case like Artem is describing.
On the top of that, like our project data is published, and if you click on and you say Trove, so on top of that we can show status inactive in yellow color or something, right? So
like I can
embed
imagine
this also
that
into Project Navigator, stuff like that. It basically spread it to everywhere, how the user can check the status of the project. It may be the Git page of the project. It may be even render docs of the project, also Project Navigator. So just spread it everywhere.
Yeah, I think, doc also you can do.
And closer to the project source code it will be, the easier it will be to
and
find out for users.
Other related change, you know, I think Terry did in the landscaping that to have only the project which has been released in that landscaping, not all. So there was some discussion on TC channel also, whether we should have all the official project in landscaping or only the released project in landscaping. So there has been change in that also. I don't know which way is good, like not listing the project is a clear indication, or listing in some different, you know, status or color is good idea. But the landscaping and navigation page are managed by the foundation staff, not by the TC. So that also something, if we wanted to make a, you know, the synchronized information everywhere, as you mentioned in the doc, source code, or the landscaping. So we need to coordinate or make a policy like how we can do it in a consistent way. Because currently, if we see any project, say Pro is not listed on landscaping, but it's there as official governance, and we have their status say inactive or something. So that is, not the consistent data we are publishing to users.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's good discussion. And Artem, if you have any proposal or something, feel free to push up on Garrett. And definitely, we can think of like adding such schema or some kind of more indication for users.
That sounds like a good conclusion. Artem, is that some action item that I can tag you with?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, awesome. So let's move on. The next topic is the PyPy maintainers cleanup. So we did touched upon this in the at the PTG and I think at some point various folks have contributed to this, but I'm not I haven't done much. So if anybody wants to take this topic and explain what is the next step that we're planning to do over here.
Yeah. So like whatever we have done till now is every project leaders has reached out to all the those additional maintainers. They have done all those cleanup. Either they removed themselves or they told like it's okay to remove. So that cleanup has been done. Even I sent a mailing list before PTG. So most of project who still have these external maintainer already told like there's no response from them, and whatever TC take action is okay for them. So what we discussed, if I remember correctly, in PTG is there were two cases. One case is where we have the OpenStack CI as an owner in those repository or packages where we have external maintainers. So their OpenStack CI being an owner has a permission to remove them. So that can be done. Second case where OpenStack CI is not an owner. So then we have to reach out to PyPy and email or something. I mean, that's difficult, I think, one.
Yeah, I think the next steps are to identify what those two lists of projects are. And then with the one where OpenStack CI is the owner, you should be able to script up a tool that does the changes, or someone, I guess, could also manually do it if they logged in as the account. And then, yeah, for the other list, for the ones where it's merely a maintainer or whatever it's called, I think the process, PyPI has a documented process for like assuming ownership. And I believe it's you file a bug on GitHub or an issue on GitHub, and then they're supposed to track it down. But as mentioned at the PTG, that's like understaffed, so it might take time. But yeah, I right, because we don't know what those two lists are yet, right?
Yes, that we don't know.
So I think the next step is to figure out, what those are, because that'll inform you whether or not you want to script up. If there's 50 projects, you maybe writing a script is better than doing it manually. But if it's one or two, then doing it manually is probably fine.
Yes, awesome. I can take an action item on this one. And I can work on the list, and G-Man, I can probably chat with you on the OpenStack TC channel and follow up on what's already been done. And
sure.
Perfect.
And Clark, just one question, Clark, do you know like an easy way to find those owner thing by logging in OpenStack CI? No,
I don't. Yeah, I mean, PyPI has an API, and they do list, like, even just if you pull up a package on PyPI, they list the owners and maintainers, but I don't know if they annotate them in any way. So the information is there.
No, they don't. You only see list of maintainers.
maintainers. Yeah, but if you log in with the OpenStack CI, so you logged in as an owner, so it should be able to list all the packages under your ownership, right? Or no?
Maybe. I don't regularly log into PyPI, so I'm not sure. But yeah, so that might be one way of doing it. If it seems like they would provide an API.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they do have a lot of like public data that they expose or have had. Like, in fact, at one point there was, you know, a bunch of data loaded into some Google database that you could query. Like they're pretty open. So it would surprise me if that isn't available, but if it isn't, then yeah, I guess maybe the next step is to log in and see if it will list for the actual account what things they own.
Yeah, and yeah, if like you can add even like Gautam or me in that OpenStack CI list if like you don't have time. Otherwise, like if like we can help you know, logging in, preparing the list, or then manually removing or all the next work.
Yeah, I think, you know, basically we need the information before we know what how we want to tackle the next bit.
Yeah. All right. We'll touch upon this in the next meeting as well. So thanks, Clark. Thanks, Kansham.
Yeah, thanks, Clark.
Any other concerns about this? If not, let's roll on over to the favorite topic, which is the general tracker that we have. We've been making quite a lot of progress. So thank you so much for all the reviews on the governance repo and also for all the proposals. Of course, that's the hard part. And I did go around and update some status. So we can take some time to discuss something that's burning in this list, or we could, you know, just go down the list if that's the preference.
Yeah, just one thing, like, yeah, you can go either way, but one thing, like, do you want to track it every week? We might not have that much progress every week. Maybe bi-weekly can be good, or what do you think?
Oh, you mean in these meetings?
Yeah, the tracker status or something. I used to do, I think, bi-weekly because every week
Yeah.
it was less status to update. But I mean, it's okay if you wanted to weekly also.
At present, I think because I'm ramping up, I'm just trying to keep up on the top of this. But maybe what I'll do is the things that need reviews, I'm going to just bring them up again. It's the DPL model stuff that we've already spoken about, and I think Slavic's user survey results. It's an easy win because we've already discussed the meat of it at the PTG, and there were some small changes that happened in the last week. So these seem like good stuff that everyone can just take a look at and, you know, +1, -1. And I think there's one that was the goal proposals. These are a little concerning at the moment. So for example, dropping eventlet versus changing eventlet to async IO. You know, we've having some Gerrit discussions going on, but they've stalled. And I think Jay, you want to say something about that?
Well, I was going to mention that we had said we kind of agreed that as a like minimum bar that we would make sure that Oslo libraries didn't require eventlet. In my research for writing that spec, I have it written up right now. There's basically nothing there. So I think that was kind of an empty goal. It's just it's done. What's not
you mean
done. Yeah.
You mean there's no hard
nothing there, basically. The amount of work that's there is not a goal. It's just a couple of do it things if they are doing it wrong. Not significant. So I don't know about that. I will say I am very concerned about the larger question because the fact that there is a giant goal up about event-led and I don't event-led and async IO and stuff is maybe seen as like a speed bump for people trying to do their own things. Like it's that up there, not merging is an impediment to people in a way. And I don't necessarily disagree with the comments made. I'm not saying like, yeah, we should have just landed this the way it looks or anything like that. But it might be worthwhile if we could find some way to communicate to the community, yeah, go try to do your thing. Use threads, use async IO, use whatever you need, you know, just go do it so that people don't feel held back.
I've not heard anybody express that thing. Are you guessing or are you responding to?
I am telling you explicitly, I have had that conversation with people.
It would be helpful if those people would not funnel all that concern just through you so that we could all, you know, hear and address it, I think.
I mean, commenting on those type of sorry, I think I muted halfway through. Commenting on those type of specs is incredibly intimidating, and I don't fault people for wanting members of the technical committee to represent their technical opinions when they don't want to get mixed up in it. So, I mean, I kind of agree with you that that would make everything easier, but I don't think we have a knob to turn there, and I do want to make sure that we're serving people, even if that means like, you know, having a conversation with Herv about if there's a slice of that, you know, we can land that talks about if you use async IO, use these patterns. If you don't, you know, here are other patterns, or there's got to be a midpoint there that we can agree on. It's just a matter of finding the right amount to write down.
Well, I don't know what to do there other than to ask him to abandon it so that it doesn't scare people. Or talk to the people that are, you know, have either concerns about not starting something based on something that I don't. It's hard to argue with a ghost, you know. So I don't.
Well,
I don't know.
I'm not a ghost, so I'm saying that that is a concern. That's a thing that's happening.
No, I know, but
I suspect
like,
that we
why?
can. I suspect one way we can resolve that would be to communicate to the community on the mailing list, whatever, and say, you know, we haven't got a consensus and we're not even sure there is a single answer for all OpenStack projects or even all use cases inside a single project, but we do know eventlet's not the future. And, you know, start investigating ways out of that, you know, collaborate on your own kind of thing. Like if the TC isn't going to pass something that has directive technical guidance, we need to make that clear to the community, I guess is what I'm getting at.
So you are saying abandon this and replace it with something that says the TC is not going to dictate a.
I think that there's lots of valuable communication happening in here. Like, I don't think this should be abandoned or anything necessarily. All I'm saying is that I think there would be value in us telling the larger community that we likely are not going to end up with a one-size-fits-all solution, because I think the conversations I've have had that as a built-in assumption, and it's very clear that that's not actually the case.
Okay, so you're saying don't abandon it, and people will see that we merged something else that said, even though we have this big thing burning, we're not going to land a solution. I guess I'm not sure. I can't.
Which was write a post to the mailing list stating that, you know, work can begin on this, that the TC is unlikely to come up with a one-size-fits-all solution, and that there's commentary in this change talking about, you know, like different approaches, what's good, what's bad about them, but that, you know, starting action now is important, because if we wait for there to be a, like I said, an OpenStack-wide one-size-fits-all consensus, I think we'll be waiting forever. And if there's no objection to like TC, if y'all think that represents the situation accurately, I'm happy to volunteer to send that email. I just don't want to send something that sounds like it's on behalf of the whole TC, that needs to have the consensus of the TC behind it to be meaningful without having a discussion at all first.
I'm personally against a single solution.
Me too. So I mean, I've said that for forever. So if I'm happy to, I'm kind of opposed to the spec being up as it is, not because I think it precludes any activity, but just because I think it's misguided, you know, just from the title line down. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm happy to have the TC say that, you know, either, I guess I'm not, I don't know how to reconcile whether like a more recent email that says we're not going to prescribe a solution while we in parallel continue commenting on a spec that claims to be the single solution is going to help squelch the ambiguity, you know. That's why I'm asking about what to change it to. And since I don't know anybody who is paralyzed by the fact that this exists, I'm not really sure what to suggest. But I'm very pro not a single solution, deciding, communicating, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's I'm trying to think the right way to say it. I think there are a lot of projects who, in the lack of guidance, will not necessarily go anywhere, which is fine in a project by project thing. So like whatever, but I do think that there's that Garrett review being up has value beyond just the words in the spec, because it has communication in there. It has a huge amount of context. I've learned a lot from reading comments on it, from reading your comments, from reading Herb's and talking to him, from like, I have a much more well-rounded view of it than other things. Like, that's the reason I'm like, let's not throw all of that conversation, all that useful context away just because as it's written, it's not going to land.
Well, we're not going to delete it. Sorry.
What I'm willing to do is I can have a conversation with her, because we've obviously been talking about this back and forth, just sort of to see if he has an opinion on this. It is his change. I'll probably suggest to him that making it more about here is a path rather than here is the path is more likely to find success, and maybe send an email out to the mailing list telling people, you know, like, hey, you know, the conclusion we've come to is that there's probably not going to be a single conclusion. And so in your individual projects, it's time to start thinking about that, to start having those conversations. And here's a bunch of useful context.
So I mean, we're not going to delete the context and the conversation that's there, obviously, because it's Garrett. I think that the people that are just now, like the recent commenters that are joining in that conversation, are doing so, even though there's a whole bunch of context to read, they are still doing so based on what it says on the tin, which is that this will be the solution, right? So to me, it makes more sense to, I mean, we also can't tell Herv to do anything, but I would prefer that we say, okay, you know, we got that that we're not going to come up with a one-size-fits-all edict. So we're going to send an email to that effect. We're going to abandon this patch as it is and try to just I see there's a benefit to dropping the context, not from a loss of the history point of view, but from a keeping the conversation appropriate to what's actually being proposed, you know, and say, okay, well, that didn't work. Let's capture all of that, but let's now have a different one, which is, here is a way that you as a project could go about removing your dependency on eventlet, and just kind of change the tone of the conversation there, because I feel like it's hard. It will be hard to like make a left turn in the middle of what all is there.
Well, the big difference between what you're proposing and what I'm proposing is basically that's more or less where I hoped a conversation with Herv would go, rather than like, I suspect it will cause us to lose significant momentum from the people who are doing work to kill eventlet if like a TC member or TC chair goes in and hits abandon on that change.
No,
That's what I'm saying. Is so like I'm happy to like kind of take this, summarize, put some of it on the list, have a couple of conversations, and try to give this a softer landing than that. But
what I meant,
I do think that its current state is more harm than good, and it's got to tip in some direction.
What I meant by we're not going to tell her what to do is meaning no one's going to go in and abandon his change, I hope. So fine, however you want to describe ending up with that kind of conversation reset is fine, but yeah.
All right. Jay, I'm going to craft this up as an agreement that we don't feel comfortable suggesting async IO as the single solution. We'd prefer isolating eventlet in the Oslo libraries and removing it from the requirements so projects can take their individual direction and make a call about the approach that makes sense to their architectures.
Can I just say one thing related to that? Jay said that the eventletectomy is probably not, there's probably not much other than like, trivial stuff, which I totally believe. However, we have the potential to invite the opposite because async IO code is not compatible with regular code. You certainly have the ability in the libraries to write them in a way that assumes that people are going to call them async.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that it would be good to try to, as a TC, preclude that behavior, meaning, you can have async interfaces to the library code. That's cool. You just can't have that be the only, within Oslo, that can't be the only way to do it. Because otherwise, people that are not async have to spin up an event loop to call one, function, which is not awesome.
I've heard no desire from anyone on that side. Like when those sort of things have come up in conversation with Oslo folks, they've basically agreed with that generally, as far as I'm aware.
I would imagine. I'm just saying, there certainly are various opinions out there, not maybe on the Oslo team currently, but just from a future point of view and setting the expectation, I think that it's probably worth wrapping that up into the same thing. Just like, even a couple of years ago, we probably could have identified that having a hard dependency on eventlet was a bad idea,
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Okay, I'm adding that aspect to, as well to this. So did I hear that, Jay, you're willing to make? Was it a Gerrit comment or an ML post or both?
I will put it in writing in the IRC so that it's not miscommunicated.
Okay. Okay. Yes, please. All right. While we're doing that, anything else on this eventlet stuff? There is another a mailing list thread that's ongoing right now. And this specifically talks about the API servers and Whiskey and the eventlet code that's there in it. So that's another good approach of breaking down the problem and identifying specific areas where projects could just take an individual direction and avoid relying on eventlet. Thank you. Anything else on the topic? If not, I just wanted to check in on the gate stability. Was there anything to share between last week and this? Looks like nothing. All right, let's step back in. Yeah, that was the next thing. And it was on the ongoing business stuff. So we're done with the regular agenda that we have. So let's go into open discussion.
Short question, basically in direction of gate stability. Because of my Rust OpenStack CLI, since the whole development is going in GitHub, I recently started really relying on GitHub Actions there. And I have figured out really one very, very interesting fact. Setup of DevStack in GitHub takes 10 minutes. Setup of DevStack in Zool takes like 40 minutes. Has anybody looked on that?
Yes, many times, and everyone ignores me.
Okay.
It's highly so. There's two things that are going on there. One is the Python startup for the OpenStack CLI is slow, and because we invoke it over and over and over and over again, that builds up. It's like just 10 minutes spent of like, I'm starting Python, and the other is because we're starting a new process each time, and we've talked about this before. We're not caching the token. And that token is getting a token is even more expensive than Python startup of the CLI tool. And so those two things together, if we address both of them, it literally like cuts the DevStack runtime in half. And because it's those two issues, one, so the CLI startup is hard drive bound, it's IO bound because Python is scanning the entire Python path and doing a bunch of information gathering for what packages are installed. And I believe token generation is CPU bound. And so depending on which cloud the jobs run on, you'll see some are worse than others and so on.
And because there's no caching, we have 50,000 select calls from Keystone over the course of all of those things, which is CPU and disk bound, and fighting both of the other two.
It's right. It's all clear. One big but in this particular situation. In both cases, we end up invoking devstack sh, so or basically stack sh. So I don't really believe that the problem is really the caching itself, because just literally the same script being executed not on OpenDev resources but inside of GitHub Actions is taking 4 times less.
Because
that's the point.
Your disk and CPU bound. And so if you have faster disks or faster CPUs or both, you're going to see things go faster. And we do see things go faster on different clouds. Like some of our clouds are worse than others. I'd have to go look at the actual data now to see which, I don't know what they are, but I know that they are very different from one another. I wrote a proof of concept years ago at this point that was basically, let's replace all of these calls with OpenStack CLI to just running a script that imports OpenStack SDK and then uses a single token to accomplish a bunch of these tasks. And I cut just naively doing that.
But we also have the thing that was already done. Daniel Berenger did it like 10 years ago, right? That literally starts it up with a, with a pipe as standard in, and we can like use the interactive shell version of OpenStack client to do everything that we need to do with very little additional change. And I +1 or +2 or whatever that DevStack change ages ago, but it never seemed to get any traction.
Yeah, and in my case, I just naively picked a section of the code that looked like it had a bunch of calls to the OpenStack CLI in one spot, so I could just replace them all with one script pretty easily in a straightforward way. And it was cutting like 7 minutes off of DevStack runtime by just replacing this block of OpenStack CLI calls.
But it's even easy. I mean, the nice thing about the server mode or whatever he called it is that nobody else needs to know. You don't have to do anything different in any of your DevStack stuff. You call OpenStack client as if you were calling it just one shot, but since the syntax is identical, everything just works. I've never understood why we couldn't get that merged, but there was complaints about, well, I guess I won't go into it, but
when I wrote the change, the concern was that DevStack should act as like an example for how to interact with the clouds to set them up and do things. And having a bespoke script to do that was considered to be, antithetical to that goal.
Yeah,
which,
I mean,
fair enough.
Right, but that's the thing about the interactive version. It's literally the same code, but it's running it one time and then passing a line of interactive shell to the thing, which is running all the same parsing and everything as if you ran one of those commands, but just on the command line. So I don't think that argument applies to the shell version. Yeah. I'm with you, Clark. Let's do it.
Yeah.
But actually, we can band together and do it, right?
In that sense, the new Rust CLI is basically something like 10 times faster, and it definitely implements caching properly, not like a previous time. In OpenStack client token caching basically failed under some certain conditions. It was something was wrong on the Keystone side, but I guess with the Rust CLI,
the argument that Clark had made to me applies doubly to your Rust client until and unless we decide that that's the canonical client. So, I mean, it's cool that it's fast, but to me that it doesn't matter until it's, you know, the default.
And I don't know if you've seen, but if you look at the end of the stack.sh log, there is some like basic accounting of where the time is spent by DevStack. I believe the unit is seconds, and so it's showing you like I spent this many seconds running these operations, this many seconds running this, and it tries to capture like the pip install took this long, the apt-get install took this long, and then also OpenStack client took this long. And I don't know, I don't think it's a total accounting. So if you add up all those numbers, you're not going to get the total runtime, but it should give you a pretty good idea of where the big things are.
The number that you get for OpenStack client is way too large for any client at all. So you can know that you'll get back a huge chunk of that, whatever that number is, at least.
Yeah. But you could directly compare those numbers between the things run on GitHub Actions platform and the OpenDev. But my hunch is that the OpenStack time, the OpenStack client time, I mean, is going to be significantly lower in your example runs, just because I know it consumes a lot of time and it's relatively easy to speed up with faster CPUs and faster disk I/O.
Also, Artem, are you literally just running stack.sh? Because there's a whole bunch of other stuff that happens in our jobs that takes several minutes before DevStack even starts running.
I'm basically comparing the OpenStack SDK functional tests and taking part of the DevStack installation itself.
Okay.
But in GitHub Actions, I'm also like there is already an action that invokes stack.sh, and adjusts exactly this time is something like just a quarter of what we have usually.
Yeah, so it's likely that they've got like very fast NVMe disks, and they're basically running that Python startup time as close to 0 as possible. And then because it's fast disk, the token generation and SQL queries and stuff are all much quicker too. So that portion of time is also not as big of an impact. But like I said, the logs do try to capture and log this info, and so you should be able to pretty easily compare the subsection costs.
Yeah, I would.
Did I also hear that, Dan, you were planning on reprising Ben's change on OSCA as a service?
I have commented on it before many times and said like we should be doing this. Why aren't we doing this? So I don't. Last I checked, it was several years old, and it's still directly applied and worked perfectly. So I don't have it in my local installation right now purely because I always have to like patch it in on top, and that's very annoying. So I would love it if we could see that it still works, merge it, even if we're not going to turn it on everywhere, just so that I can turn it on locally would be amazing. But
yeah,
if there's willingness to apply it now, I mean, I can certainly pick it up and see if there's any reason it doesn't still work. But
I mean, I think if we merged it behind like a flag, then it's really easy to turn it on in a canary job or two, and
right, that's what I would.
That works for a week, turn it on by default.
Yep.
Yeah, and there seems to be a flag, and in the Zool config that.
Oh yeah, you have to. Yeah, you have to opt into it anyway. So.
Yeah. Awesome. I just rebased that patch. We can chat about it in the OpenStack TC channel.
Cool. Well, we'll see if it works, I guess. When it runs the rebase, that'd be good.
All right. Anything else for today? If not, we're almost at the hour. I give you back a whole minute to do something fun. So thank you all for joining. See you on the OpenStack TC channel and here in a month. Take care.
Okay. Yeah.